Hi, everybody. This is Linda Goldman. It's Thursday. I'm so delighted that you're back. Can't wait to speak with you and get your thoughts and your opinions. It's been a fun week so far. We have today and tomorrow is the last day. But I can say that I've got a lot of emails, a lot of people contacting me, asking questions, sending me the homework. So it's really wonderful to have spent this time with you and to be spending more time today and tomorrow as well. So today we're going to talk about the writing, and I know that this is a really important topic for a lot of people, especially the people who feel like you're not a writer, feel like maybe you don't write well or you're unsure of your writing. So we're going to get rid of all that fear and doubt about writing today. It's going to be a big day for you when you find out that there's other options and ways to write. So here we are in 2017, and maybe the first time you started your book was 2016. That's kind of an old-fashioned typewriter, but I still have some around my house, believe it or not. Maybe you started your book once before, maybe you started multiple books, maybe you stuck at the beginning, maybe you're stuck in the middle, or maybe you almost finished and couldn't get it finished. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, ways to get you unstuck and ways to get your book written, whether you feel like you're a good writer or you don't. So we have options. There's not just one way to do things, and I'm going to give you 2 ways to write a high-quality book quickly and professionally. So let me ask you a question. Do you feel like you have to become this guy to become a book writer? I know he's reading, but he has stacks of books around him. But many people email me, or I hear this, and they say, well, I feel like I have to shut myself in my attic or my basement or some room somewhere and shut myself away from everybody and just sit and write my book until it's finished. And if you're especially an extrovert, but even if you're not, it could be a lonely process. You may feel like you have to shut yourself away from everybody and block off huge amounts of time, and that's the only way to get your book done. And I'm here to tell you that it's not the case. From my own experience, I wrote the first 27 books I wrote. I was teaching full-time at the college level, and I had 2 kids under 8 years old. So, and I managed to write the books, many of them, 3 books a year. So it's not impossible. It does take some prioritizing, but the good thing is that you need to only prioritize for 3 months. And it's not that big a sacrifice if that's what you want. If it's not what you want, of course, it's a sacrifice. But if it's what you want, you find it enjoyable and you find a way. But the most important thing is to have the methods and the support that you need to do it. So I just want to tell you that you should not worry, that there is a solution for everyone to write a high quality book. And we're going to be exploring the 2 solutions that I know of and how to actually really get it done in just a few minutes. So let's start with the Q&A, Tracy. So let's see, what do you most want to learn today? And while we're doing this, I'm going to remove my camera so I can get more comfortable in doing the presentation.
So just please open the question box and let us know what you most want to learn today. And I am not surprised, number 1 on our list is recording, Linda.
Yes, for sure. We're going to talk about that.
And let's just give a few more moments here for people to let us know what they want to learn most today. Linda, we also have where to start writing.
Okay.
How to write most efficiently and effectively, time-wise. Also software for outline or structure.
Okay.
Oh, first person versus third person voice.
Ah, okay. Good question. Yes.
How do you know when to stop researching and when to start writing?
Okay. All right. I'm going to make sure I answer those, and if I forget, we'll come back to them at the end.
And that looks like it's about it for right now, Linda.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to definitely be sure to answer those because they're important questions, and any others that you have. So let's just continue a little bit with where we were. So Every week, every day of this week, we're diving into a step of the process. The first day we talked about the focus of your book and having the right audience and the right message. The second day we talked about design and how to design your cover and the title and subtitle to have the most impact and effect. Yesterday we talked about the structure and some awesome structures such as using numbers, steps, a method, or how to, or doing a book of tips about your subject. And so those are some very effective structures. And today we're continuing with the actual writing, and I know you're going to be excited about that. So we actually did a lot of speeding yesterday when we talked about the, that's why I have the speeding kind of image. We talked about the structure and how to make it useful and easy, and the importance of stories and case histories, and your hero story and why it matters. And we'll touch on those again a little bit today in the context of writing. So today I want to talk about taking it to the next level, which is actually getting words on a page one way or the other. While you really might be a writer, even if you don't think you are, how to write your book quickly. And we're going to talk about the two ways to do that. One is the writing way and one is the recording way. And how to get a professional book without being a writer if you don't choose to write. I'm also going to talk about the biggest writing mistakes that some people make, and they actually come to editing mistakes, and we'll get to that in a minute. And I have something new that's really fun at the end, not the same thing as yesterday. As you probably come to see, I have new fun things every day. So wait till tomorrow, it's going to be even more fun. And just putting this into the context, today we're talking about the method of writing. So we've already talked about the importance of goals and a focus. Otherwise, you're adrift without the goals. You don't have a focus, so you don't have the right readers. We talked about the structure, and without it, you have confusion. And we talked about design, and without it, you look unprofessional. And the method is very important as well, because if you don't have a method for writing, then you won't get your book finished. Your book will be stalled somewhere. So that's why I'm not going to let that happen to you, and we're going to talk about how to do it. But I just want to take a quick moment to show you some of the amazing, fantastic titles from yesterday with high emotional marketing value. So a few people sent me their titles, and this is one person who actually has joined my sprint. And look at the titles. Use your mind to heal your body. 71.43% in intellectual and spiritual. Like I'm blown away. The healthy body mindset. 75% intellectual. Like that's really amazing. Feel free from the fear of chronic illness. I mean, 37% is fantastic too. I put in many times where I couldn't even get 16 or something. And even more. Prevent, Survive, Thrive, Every Woman's Guide to Optimal Breast Care, 50%. I mean, fantastic scores. Meditation Made Easy, more than 50 exercises for peace, relaxation, and mindfulness, 25%. Backyard Organic Gardening. Look at all the keywords in here. Easily, effortless. You create your own organic garden oasis for optimal health, nutrition. And then he has the 7 steps. And 55% empathetic. Like you can see how those keywords are so important, and if you can work some of them into your title or your subtitle, just playing around with the subtitle and title and adding some of those keywords, you can try over and over again. Well, what if I put in the word effortlessly, or what if I put in easily, or what if I put in successfully? And you can see it might really change your score a lot. So I think that this is a fun tool. I just had one tiny tip, and that is that when you're using a number, always put in the actual number, 7 or 5 or 10, rather than the word, because people see it more clearly, and it's a more graphic representation of a number. But that's just a very tiny thing. So again, some fantastic titles, and I'm so delighted that you did this and you sent it to me, because I think that this shows you that you can actually do this. I mean, you can create amazing titles, and now you'll be able to do the rest of your book. So, onwards and upwards. So I want to know what scares you the most about writing. So we will talk about recording, but there may be some writing that you have to do, maybe not too much. And some of you will choose to write after you get this. So I want to really know what scares you the most about writing. So we're going to do a quick poll, Tracy. And here are the questions. So Is it expressing yourself well? Is it writing at a professional level? Maybe you feel like your writing isn't professional. Maybe you're worried about grammar and punctuation, that you don't know all the grammar and punctuation rules. Or maybe you don't know how to write the right language and the right level for your readers. So choose the one that you feel is most. I should have actually given you an option for all of them, but let's see which one you figure is the most pressing one for you. So let's see what the polls bring up.
Just a few more people answering it. And we're about close to be finished, so I'll just start. So 35, sorry, the first one, expressing myself well, 35%. Writing at a professional level, 19%. Grammar and punctuation, 15%. Using the right language for my readers, 33%.
Ah, that's interesting, because I was wondering if anyone would actually choose number 4 and actually recognize that there is a different language from your readers, for different readers. So we're going to get into that in a minute. But let's just go on to what's really scaring you about writing. And probably it's not even so much the writing, it's creating the structure. We discussed that, because once you create the structure, the writing is actually going to be easier, because a lot of writer's block is not knowing what to write. It's not so much the writing, and you can always edit the writing or get editing, or some combination of doing it yourself and having an editor. So I just want to tell you that writing is a skill. Anyone can learn to write better, and it's probably easier than you think. And I mean, there are many books on how to write well and many courses. I can't go into it here because there's just not enough space. But for the people in my sprint, I will have some more tips on how to write well. But you know, I didn't write well when I started. When I had my first opportunity to write a book, my writing was not any better than anyone else's. In fact, I never thought I'd be a writer. I wanted to be an artist. That was my background. And so I read some books and I practiced, and my writing partner actually was a better writer than me, and she helped me a lot, you know, to make my language more fluid and more easy to read. And I later became a copywriter, and then I studied copywriting, so I learned much more about how to write in a way that's very readable. But it takes practice, and it's just a skill like anything else. And you've learned many skills in your life, and if you choose to and you're interested, you can vastly improve your writing just with, you know, some tips. It doesn't have to be earth-shattering to get to a better writing level. So, you know, many of you think you're not a writer, the ones that said you don't want to write or you're afraid of writing. And the truth is that you probably write quite a lot every day. You just don't think of yourself as a writer. So, you know, maybe you're writing on Facebook, maybe it's just messages to your friends, maybe it's not professional, so you don't think of it as writing. Maybe you're writing blog posts, maybe you're writing articles. These are all things that you're writing every day. I mean, even a tweet, you know, if you're on Twitter, even that takes writing, because you have to actually sharpen your words and get exactly the right words. You don't have a lot of space to express yourself in a long way. You have to do it in a short way. Now, is writing a book, sorry, more difficult than writing a blog post? I mean, or a Facebook page? I mean, yes, it is in a sense, because you have a bigger structure. But we talked about the structure and how to make that easier to use. You do have more content. It is longer than a blog post. And there are more book conventions, such as the front and back matter. But we already talked about that as well. And that's all learnable. You know, once you look at a book and you realize there are some conventions, you just, you know what to do, and you could just follow a few books that you have. And there's not one set in stone way to do it. There's many. So, you know, those are things that you learn and you get the experience, and then it's not a big deal anymore. And the other thing is that writing is no longer set in stone as it used to be, because when you have a publisher, they're going to do a big print run. And so, I mean, if you change something and you say, oh, I got some new research, I want to change something, I have an update, I have some new stories to add, you can't be very flexible with a big publisher. They're going to say, well, we have to sell out your first print run before we even think of doing another print run, and that's the only reason they do another print run is if your first book sold well. Well, I mean, everything has changed now with Amazon and print on demand, POD. So, you know, if you have a book on Amazon and you decide to change something or add something, you can literally go in, upload a new version of your book, and within a few hours, the new version will be up. So let's say you find a typo, or let's say you find something that you want to change or something that you want to add. Within a few hours, you just go in, change your manuscript, upload a new one, and it's done. And if you're printing on demand, you only print the number of books you're going to sell or you need right now. So you can print 10 or 100 or whatever it is, instead of, I used to have to print 2,000, 3,000 books at a time. It was prohibitive per book. Otherwise, I'd be charged $10 a book. That was with offset printing. So I couldn't change things very easily. I had to wait till I sold out a print run of 2,000 books before I could make any changes when I found a typo. So that was a lot more difficult and stressful, but times have changed. So the next thing is Dr. Bradley Nelson. He wrote a book, and I interviewed him, and he wrote a book called The Emotion Code. And I asked him, well, what was the easiest thing and the hardest thing about writing the book? His book did phenomenally well. It changed his whole business to serving people around the world, and using Skype to set up appointments to help people. Before, we used to have a hands-on practice where there were only people in his neighborhood that he could help, and now it's changed his business completely. And he even, has coaches and health coaches and other practitioners that he hires to help him. But his idea is to imagine finding a long-lost friend on Facebook or somewhere else, and you're writing a series of emails to them to update your friend. So it could be about your life, but it could be what you learned, what you're teaching people. So imagine that that's all you're doing, is just writing to a friend. And if you can write to a friend in a way that is clear and readable, you have a winning formula for writing a book. You don't need to write in the third person, so you should write in the first person. That's the first thing I learned about writing effectively, is that you're writing one-to-one to your reader, just like I'm speaking to you one-to-one. Your reader, you're speaking directly to your reader, and you're saying, if you have a problem with headaches or back pain, here's what you can do. Here's the nutrition you can use, or the solutions that you can have. You're not saying, oh, if somebody has a problem with back pain, this is what they should do. So you're always writing directly to your reader, because, reading a book is actually a very intimate thing. Like, you write something on a page to someone that you may or may not ever meet in your life, and that person has your words inside their head as if they're talking to you. And think about books that you've read. It could be fiction or nonfiction, where you feel like you know the author. You feel like you're friends, and yet the author doesn't know you. But you've spent time with that person, understanding their way of thinking, their solutions to things, their thoughts, their processes, and you feel like you know them. And if you would meet them somewhere, you say, oh my God, I feel like I know you so well. I read your book and I know everything you think about this. That's the power of a book, and that's the power of using the first person. So to the person that asked me that, yes, definitely that's what you should be using. You write directly to your reader. Never, if it's a, scholastic book, or maybe to a scientific book, that would be different. But when you're writing a consumer book for the general public, yes, you do write directly to your reader. So the next thing people ask me is, how much and how long will it take me to write my book? So if you were to write a blog post, or even a long Facebook message to a friend, you could easily write 750 words in less than an hour. I do this all the time. That's without editing, and that's without rereading it and checking your grammar and checking your punctuation and going back and fixing things. But if you just sat down to write, and you start writing about something that you already know, it's already in your head, it's something that you've done in your practice, you have the outline, you can easily write 750 words in an hour. I know that you could do that without, as long as you're not censoring yourself. So let's say for 5 days a week, you were to write 750 words, less than an hour. Every morning you got up an hour earlier or late at night, or early on Sunday morning, whatever suits you, whatever works in your lifestyle. And you wrote 3,750 words in 1 week. So where would that get you? Well, it would get you a very nice sized book. Excuse me. So in 6 weeks, you would have 22,500 words, which is a little bit over 100 pages. And don't forget, you'd add some back matter and front matter. So you probably have a book of maybe 125, 130 pages, which is very presentable. It's a very good sized book. It's not huge, but it's very good, and it can still be an authority book. It's not like a pamphlet. So let's say you wanted to write a little bit bigger, a book that's a little bit bigger. So let's say 5 days a week, you spent an hour and a half, and you wrote 1,000 words. You could write 5,000 words a week, and in 6 weeks, you could write 30,000, which is a bigger book, 150 pages. If you want to take a little longer, and you don't have to go by my timeline, you can take longer for sure. In 8 weeks, you would have 40,000 words, which is a 200-page book, which is almost closer to a full-size book. A full-size book is considered 250 pages, and it's about 60 to 80,000 words. So again, with front matter and back matter and a table of contents, I mean, that always bumps up your book, maybe 25 pages at least. And so if you do the math, I mean, you can see that this is actually very doable. And the hardest thing is the first draft, like getting that first draft done. That's where people get bogged down. So you start writing, and if you can't get the first draft done, you can't get to the editing, you can't do anything else. So if you could actually take 6 weeks or 4 weeks or 8 weeks, whatever it is that you want, you decide, you know, the length of your book that you want, that you're aiming for, and how many words you need, and then you just divide it by how many days you're able to work, if it's 4 days or 5 days or 6 days, and you just keep writing till you get that word count. And then you do the editing, so you don't worry about editing at this point. Now, what I don't recommend for most people is to just try to sit down and do it all at once. Like, that mostly doesn't work. I've done it on occasion where I've really had writing sprees and I just sit and write. Once I intentionally gave myself a cold, not with knowledge, but I sort of let myself get a very bad cold, so I couldn't see anybody, and I sat and I wrote a book and finished a book in just over a week. I mean, a good part of a book, but it wasn't very pleasant. I had Kleenex all over the place. So I don't really recommend you do this. I recommend that you schedule time, and so you know that at 7 or 6 to 7 every morning, or 10 to 11 at night, or whatever it is, whether you're a morning person or a night person, that's when you write your book, and you'll see really good progress, but that way, and you won't feel like you have a big burden on you. So the 2 keys to success are to do a quick, rough draft. It's called the dirty first draft, and you don't edit or check spelling, because as soon as you start editing and checking, you get stuck on chapter 1 and you're never going to finish. You don't even look at it. You just do the first rough draft. You keep writing, forget about spelling, forget about punctuation, just get the contents down. And you follow your outline, so you never get writer's block. So every morning you get up and you say, okay, I worked on chapter 2. Today I'm working on chapter 3, which is about nutrition and headaches, or whatever it happens to be. Now, can you jump around? Yes. I mean, if you feel inspired and you really want to write the part about exercise right now, and you want to go back to nutrition, yeah, of course you can do that. If you have a story that you want to put in there or something else. But if you don't know what to do the next morning and you wake up at 6 ready to write, well, just follow your outline and just start writing. And if it's not great stuff at the beginning, it'll get better. So that's one way that you could do the writing. And I'm sure that many of you are chomping at the bit. You're just waiting to find out about the recording. So now let's get to that. So the recording is that you speak your first draft. And so how fast can you actually do that? Well, you're going to be blown away when I show you this next slide. So most people speak at roughly 100 words a minute, sometimes a bit faster, 100, 125, somewhere in that range. But I'm going to take it on the average. So if you speak at 100 words a minute, in 1 hour, you have 6,000 words. I mean, is that amazing or what? So in 5 hours of speaking, you have 30,000 words. You have a whole book. Now, this is a first draft. It's not edited. It's not ready to go out. But you have a whole first draft in, in 5 hours of speaking. Maybe it'll take you 6 or 7. Maybe you'll need to re-record something or go back because you're not happy with something or you have new ideas. But this is a ballpark. So this is how many authors create their first draft in just one weekend. I mean, imagine that if you just say, okay, this weekend, I'm taking 5 hours on Saturday or Sunday from 1 to 5. I'm going to be recording my book. And it's a good idea, actually, to do it in 2 or 3 sittings so you don't get too tired, but you could do it in one. You could, say over this weekend from Saturday morning at 9 till Sunday at 6, I'm going to record, 5 hours of my book. And you pretty much have the first draft of your book. So there's a few keys to doing this. So one of them is to prepare questions ahead of time. So you have your outline, and then you're going to have questions, and you're going to have a partner with you. And hopefully, if you're taking the sprint, it'll be somebody that's your buddy, I call it your accountability buddy. And so you're going to help each other. So one weekend you're going to help one person will be speaking and the other one will be asking questions, and the other time you'll switch. But it doesn't have to be. And if you don't take my program and you want to do it on your own, I mean, you just find a colleague that can help you, or a family member, or somebody, a friend that's willing to do this, and you explain the process. And you prepare a good outline and you prepare questions ahead of time, and then your friend is just interviewing you and saying, okay, well, someone who has headaches, what kind of nutrition do you recommend? And then you're going to talk about, what you recommend and why and how and what the effects are and everything else. So you create all those questions ahead of time, and it's very easy for the other person. You want to speak conversationally. You don't want to get into some kind of scientific speaking, because that's going to make it harder at the editing stage, unless you're writing an academic book, but I'm assuming that people here are not. So you want to speak as if you're speaking to a friend, as if you're having coffee with a friend, and then your friend asks, well, tell me about what you do in your practice. I have a headache and you're a headache specialist. What would you recommend to me? And then you're going to go through the steps of talking about it as if you're just talking to a good friend. It's really important to stick to your outline, because a lot of times I've seen this happen. You kind of go off on a tangent, and it's fine a little bit to do that, especially if you're telling a story, but your buddy or your interview partner has to know to bring you back when when you veer offline a little bit. Otherwise, you end up with a lot of recorded content that's no good. I've seen this happen a few times. So it's really important to have good kind of communication with the person that's going to interview you, and make sure that they kind of bring you back if you get off tangent, and kind of stick to your outline. You can always come back and add more content. Like, that's not a big deal. But you want to get that first draft done. So once it's to do the recording, I mean, it's very easy. There's many recording. You can have a recording device on your computer, on your phone. That's very easy. It doesn't cost anything. Most phones, I believe, have a recording device. There's a way to do it on the phone, which is called free conference call. It doesn't cost you anything. And it's recorded, and then you get an MP3 file, MP3 or 4, I'm not sure. You get a file that you send to a transcriptionist, and there's many places you can find that online. That you can actually go to Fiverr, or you could go to one of the places where they have freelancers, and I have some other resources as well, and you get it transcribed. And so you get a transcription back. Now, what I want to tell you is that, first of all, the first draft is done, and you give yourself a big high five because you've reached a huge milestone. Like, most people don't actually get their first draft done. And I'm sure if anybody here is stalled or they've tried, it's because you didn't get your first draft done. It's not that you got it done and you didn't get editing. It's that you couldn't get the first draft done. So if you've reached that big milestone, like, kudos to you, that's great. And you're like halfway there. And maybe you've done that in just a weekend. So can you imagine that? Instead of thinking that you have to shut yourself up in an attic somewhere for 6 years hammering out your tome, imagine if you could do it in a weekend. Like, that's amazing. So you have your first draft done. But so before I go on, I just want to take a little poll and say, now that you've seen these two methods, and you might have seen the power of either one of them, depending on whether you want to, if you enjoy writing or you don't enjoy writing, which of these methods appeals to you most? I'm just curious. So is it writing the first draft yourself, or recording and having the first draft transcribed? So Tracy, let's see what people have to say.
Thank you, Linda. And the poll is launched. We'll just give everyone a quick moment to type in their responses. And just a quick more moment to get your response in, and then I'll read them out loud. And Linda, the first, which method appeals to you most? 63% say writing the first draft yourself.
Oh, interesting.
And interesting, and 37% say recording and having the first draft transcribed.
Oh, interesting. I thought it would be reversed, so I'm very interested in that. So we actually have some writers or people that want to be writers in the group. So that's actually wonderful. And I mean, I have to say that whatever method you try, I mean, if you find you want to record half of it, maybe you write part of it and you say, well, I want to record certain chapters. I mean, there's no reason you can't do a mixture of both. Or maybe you record part of it and you say, well, I really want to write this chapter because I have a lot of ideas. I feel like writing it. I mean, there's no reason that you have to choose one and not do the other. You can do both. So that's marvelous. So in a minute, I'm going to talk about what you do after you have the first draft. But I want to give you a very powerful tip before I forget. And that's a surprise media tip. So, and it's this. Now, this is not something you do at the beginning. This is something you do later, but I just wanted to get this in while I remember. So you make every chapter title a standalone topic. And the reason for that is that, let's say, someone in the media finds your book on Amazon or gets a hold of your book one way or the other, someone that does a radio show or podcast, a newspaper column, a TV show, and you have this whole book, but every chapter has something interesting, has an interesting standalone topic. Well, they might say, you know, I want to do an interview on chapter 3 when you talk about the benefits of nutrition on back pain. I mean, I didn't think about nutrition for back pain, but you know, I have back pain and maybe my nutrition is affecting it. So instead of talking about exercise for back pain, let's talk about nutrition for back pain. You never know what's going to excite somebody. So, you know, having each chapter as a bit of a standalone, but of course it all has to go together as a book, is a really good media tip to get into the media. And we're going to talk about how powerful getting into the media is tomorrow, because that can actually revolutionize what happens after you have your book. So this is something, now the next step is that once you have a separate chapter that's a bit of a standalone, you create a title that provokes curiosity and captures attention. So this is something I did. I wrote a book a number of years ago. I was teaching business etiquette. Don't ask me why I was doing that. It was way before I started writing about health. But I kind of fell into that as a kind of a stopgap. And I was actually had a very good business teaching business etiquette, which I don't even like that much. I was asked to speak at a lot of conferences, and I wrote a book called How to Make $1 Million First Impression. And that book got me into a lot of conferences where I was paid well to speak at companies. And so this is an example. Every chapter had a kind of a riveting title. So one chapter was how to be a great conversationalist while saying very little. So people would always pick that up and say, well, what do you mean? I mean, don't you have to talk if you're a conversationalist? And so all it meant to do was provoke curiosity. And I mean, the answer to that is, you know, when you listen, you're a good conversationalist. But I could have just said how to be a good listener. But they would have said, oh, well, okay, everybody knows you have to be a good listener. But when you put it in a provocative kind of way, you just want to pique people's curiosity. You want to say, well, what do you mean by that? And so that's where you get in the media. That's where people quote you or want to interview you or whatever on a podcast. So I'm going to come back to this a little more tomorrow, but I just wanted to give you a little power tip to think about when you're creating your table of contents, which is going to happen with the outline. So now I want to come to something important, which is the transcript. So now you have your transcript, which is, or the first draft of your book, one or the other, or you know, some combination that creates the first draft. And a transcript is not a manuscript. And I've seen, actually, there are companies out there that kind of give a service of interviewing you, which I also do when I work with my private clients, but they're fairly cheap. And so what they do is, I mean, if the price is too good to be true, this is what happens. They interview you and they get a manuscript, and then they put in a table of contents and divide up a few chapters and give you a reasonably nice cover. And they say, well, Bob, here's your book. And it's not a book. And I've looked at some of those books and they just do not read well. I mean, they're not edited, and you can't just divide things into chapters without editing them. It just doesn't work. It's just clumsy and repetitive, and it doesn't read well. So if you're going to go that route, just be very careful not to take a manuscript, a transcript, and pretend it's a manuscript, because it's really not. So here's the next point, is that editing saves lives, and it saves your book. And I found this quote by somebody here, which I thought was very funny. It says, "Be careful about reading or writing health books. Some fine day you'll die of a misprint." So imagine if something was badly written and caused somebody some harm just because of editing. I mean, that could be pretty bad. And there's another funny one here about the benefits of punctuation. So let's eat, Grandma, or let's eat, Grandma. So, you know, punctuation also saves lives. Just the comma missing or in the wrong place could make a huge lot of difference. So everyone needs an editor. Everyone needs a good editor. It's a matter of how much editing you need. And what I'm teaching you is going to save you quite a bit of editing and quite a bit of editing needs. So you will not need an editor extensively, but that could depend. I mean, some of you may just say, I have a transcript and I've done my book. It's conversational and I don't want to have to edit it at all. I want an editor. And that's perfectly fine. You can get excellent editors. I know some excellent ones. They will actually take your transcript and turn it into a book. And I've done this for my clients as well, and it's something I do. So that's perfectly fine, but just you have to know what kind of editing you need and what stage of editing you need. So there's actually 3 kinds of editing, probably a little more, but these are the main kinds. So the first one is developmental or structural, and that deals with the content, the style of writing, and the flow. So when you use the STEP method, that really helps you a lot with the flow of content and makes it much easier. The place where people really get bogged down with the developmental and structural editing is if you don't have a good outline or you don't use one of the methods I told you, I talked about yesterday. Now you can use another method, but it will probably cause you more problems in the content and flow. So again, I mean, it's all individual and you could use any kind of method you want. I think the mind mapping often leads to a lot of content and flow problems later on, but not to say it's not a good starting point. So as I said, the structure is built in when you use one of these methods. So if you have an 8-week process to do something, well, you just outlined it. Every week you do something else. So you're not going to have that much structural problems. You're not going to have that many problems because you're going to know every week this is what you do. If you find, okay, in week 5 I wrote something and I really should do it in week 1, well, I mean, you just move it to week 1. It's not the end of the world. If you have 50 things to know about a stress-free life, well, I mean, that probably doesn't even matter the order. You write your 50 things and then you just kind of put them in some logical order. You don't have that much problem with content, with structure and flow. So you could save yourself quite a lot of money in the editing. And then you go right to the copy editing, which I'm going to talk about sorry, in just a minute. Now, the next thing is you want to sprinkle your book generously with stories. And we talked about the importance of stories. So on your first go round with the writing or the speaking, you may not put in enough stories, and you can always go back in and add more stories. In fact, I mean, I consider stories kind of like decorating your book, but in a very vital way. So this is how I compare it. So imagine that you have a home, you want to decorate your living room or whatever, and you have this white room, and you have white walls, and you have a very nice couch or chair or whatever it is, but there's nothing there. There's no visual elements. Well, what a boring, unexciting room that would be. It might be functional. You can sit on the couch, but just by adding some decor elements like the yellow vases, the pillow, the picture frames above, all of a sudden you have a room that is unique. Nobody else has this exact room, and you can make it as unique as you want. Well, imagine your book. I mean, you might be writing about, headaches or digestion or, how to take probiotics or whatever it is, or how to eat a plant-based diet. There's other books out there like that. Yours might be better, but I mean, how does anyone know? What they'll know is the stories you tell. When you tell a good story about yourself, your hero story, your clients' stories, ways that you help clients, that's what's going to make your book unique, and that's what people will remember. So once you've done that draft, then you go in and you put in the stories, or you can put them in for sure when you do the first draft. But if you don't remember to do that, then you go back, and that's like really making your book unique and special. So I hope you like that tip, because it's a lot of fun. And my students in the past always said that was a great tip about decorating your book like you're decorating your home. So now I want to talk about the editing phases. Now, the next one is the copy editor. So once you have your structure down, all the content is in the right order, you have the content you want, but your language may be needing a bit of work. So you're editing for language, the word choice. So you don't want repetitive words. So you don't want to say, when you have digestive problems, take this for your digestive problems. So you might say, when you have digestive problems, take this for your tummy troubles, or whatever it is. Like, you don't want the same keywords in the same sentence. So that's kind of like word choice. Grammar, I mean, you know what grammar is. It's and punctuation. I mean, you know what that is. It's correcting what's incorrect, and spelling mistakes. Word order, capitalization, all that stuff. So this is what the copy editor does. And once you have the structure down, the copy editing is a lot less expensive. If you have to do all the editing, then it adds up. But if you have this well done, the first part, then the copy editing is much simpler and much faster. So at the final stage, most people think that proofreading is actually editing, and it's not. I mean, that's really the final stage. After your book is laid out, after it's almost ready to go to the printer, or upload to Amazon, that's when you do a proofreading. And the reason that you have to do it at the very, very last stage is that every time you make a change in your book, you're going to have a new mistake. I know that this happens because you can read it over and you have no mistakes, and then you say, well, I'm going to add something here, I'm going to change something and move it around. Boom, then you get a mistake. Because every time you type, some mistake could come in. It could be a typo, it could be a spelling mistake. So that's when you have a proofreader at the very, very last stage, before it goes to any kind of printing or publishing process. And many people think proofreading is publishing, or editing, but it's really not. So what are the mistakes people make in editing? Well, the first thing is not getting a professional editor who knows what they're doing. One of the main things I see is people go to a school teacher, and Miss so-and-so that taught you grammar in grade 5 or whatever, she's still around teaching grammar, and she's going to get pretty mad if you make a typo or you break the grammar rules. Well, she's not an editor. Teaching grammar is not an editor. It could be an aunt, a friend, a neighbor, somebody next door, a colleague who says, oh, I'm really good at writing, I'm really good at grammar, I'll be happy to edit your book for nothing or for a very small fee. Well, beware, because editing is a skill that people learn. People learn how to edit, and it's not just writing well, and it's not just finding typos. It's a lot more than that. So hire a professional editor for what you need. And again, depending on the level of editing, whether it's just the copy editing or you need more, you need to find someone that has the right skills. Some editors are developmental editors, some are copy editors, and many do both, but not all. All right, so we've covered a lot, and I hope that this makes you feel great about your process and your path for writing and transcribing and speaking and everything else up to the editing process. So now I have another secret tip, and this, you're gonna love this. This is really, really cool. It's testing your writing level. So I don't know if any of you have ever heard of this, but people who write for big companies as copywriters are, and which I have done, is actually required to test your reading level so that it's at the right level for your readers. And you may not have thought about this. So there's something called the Fleisch, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, readability formula. And there's a very long link, which I couldn't get a shorter one. So I'm not going to give you the link. I know you can't read it. I couldn't even get it to not be blue. But if you Google later, if you go later to Google and you put in FLESCH, readability formula, this link will come up. And it was started by somebody named Rudolf Fleisch, an author, writing consultant, and a supporter of the plain English movement. Well, where did that come from? I can tell you, it came from corporate speak, where people started writing in this fancy way of the passive voice and the third person, and using all these jargon, like let's circle back and let's get granular and all this stuff. Because I used to write for people in big corporations at one point. And so people couldn't even understand, well, what does it mean to get granular? Like, what am I supposed to do? So much of this corporate jargon came out that he created this level so that people could really understand and people could get back to writing in plain English. And so for most of your readers, you may think that you should be writing at the college level, but it's actually too hard for most of your readers. And you may think, well, I don't want to write down to my readers, they're smart people. And yes, they are smart people. But what you have to remember is that smart people are also busy people. And that smart people don't know what you know about your subject matter. They don't know about the health topic that you're writing about. They have some other expertise. So if you're writing at a difficult level for them, they're just not going to read your book if it's not readable. So two very simple ways to simplify it is to shorten long sentences. You should actually have a variety of sentence lengths. Some should be a bit longer, some shorter. Never have all the sentence length the same because that's just boring. But if you have long run-on sentences, break them into smaller ones. And he says change any 3-syllable word. Well, I don't say change every 3-syllable word, but make sure that you have not too many of them and they're interspersed with simpler, plainer words. So you really should be aiming for a grade 8 to 9 level. And if you can do that, for sure nobody is going to say at a higher level, oh, your book was too simplistic, I couldn't read it. I can guarantee that's not going to happen. But people who can't understand it will put it aside and not read it. So this is a very good tool, and you can test your own reading level. I'm going to give you some homework to do that if you choose to do it. So I'll explain that in a coming moment. So I'll get to the homework in a minute, but I just want to talk about what we covered today. And so we talked about why you really may be a writer, even if you don't think you are. And actually, you proved it to me because more than half of you, I think 60-something%, said that you think you are a writer and you want to write your book. So that was not what I thought would happen. So bravo for those people, and bravo for the people that want to do the speaking part. How to write your book quickly. So I showed you how to do it in both ways, whether you want to write it and divide up the number of words per week, or whether you want to record and edit your book professionally. Both of them will give you a wonderful book, and it's your content, and you're still the author, whether you use either method. You don't have to worry about that. You can be a writer to be an author, but you don't even have to be. People don't ask you, are you a writer? They ask, are you an author? Or you say, I'm an author of this book. You don't say, I'm a writer of this book. So think of it that way. Whatever method you use, as long as you get a good quality book out, That's the main important thing. So now I want to take a moment for some aha moments and find out what was the biggest one for you, the biggest breakthrough or light bulb moment. And so let's launch this, Tracy, and see what people have to say.
Aha moment into the question box. I'm just going to jump in and say the readability for myself, that was just, it's fascinating, grade 8 or grade 9. Wow. Well, and now let me read what other people say, though.
Yeah, interesting.
Sally says the provocative chapter titles. Also, we have the speed with which I can write or record a book. More aha moments are chapter titles and standalone topics. Miriam also said the readability as well. Proofreader is not an editor. The breakdown of the words and how to write 30,000 words. The amount of words I can write in 1 week. And the different type of editors.
Awesome.
Oh, I got a few more, if I may.
Yeah,
I like
sure.
this. Keep it simple. David's comment is getting more and more pumped every day to write his book.
Oh, yay. Wonderful.
And then also how quickly a book can be written.
I bet nobody thought of that before you started this week-long boot camp, that you thought that it would take you months or years, probably years, to write a book, right? And you can see now that you could write a book of 150 pages or 175 pages, whatever you want, within a couple of weeks. Like, isn't that powerful?
So powerful. And one more comment I'll just throw in there.
Yeah.
Writing to the reader versus about them was very helpful.
Exactly. And let me just answer quickly. Somebody asked earlier about when to stop researching. I would say if you have a huge amount of researching, then you're probably not ready to start your book, but you probably don't. You probably think that you need to put in studies and verify the studies. And yes, that may very well be, but you can write your first draft and just put an annotation and say, check research or add research here or something. So you should not wait until you've done all the research to start writing. If you're doing that, you probably are not writing the right book. You probably don't have enough content, and maybe you should think of some other focus for your book. But if it's like that, when you're really doing research before you start, that's like writing a whole new book. Maybe you're doing an experiment or something and you want to get data for something. So that is a book that you could write, but if you want to write a book more quickly, I would say to start with a book that you already have the content. Maybe you need to verify things. So when you do the first draft, you just put a note, verify the statistics or check the study or something. And that way it won't hold you back. Does that make sense? Hopefully for somebody. Okay, so now I want to get to the homework for the serious forthcoming authors in this group. And now I know that there are many serious forthcoming authors. So what I'm going to do is ask you to find some text that you have already written for your target audience. It could be a blog post, an article, something on your website, anything that you've already written for your clients or your patients or whoever would be your target audience, the kind of person that you want to be reading your book. Go to the Fleisch readability formula and plug in. There's a big, it opens a box and you copy and paste your writing. It could be, I think they tell you how many words. It's maybe a couple hundred words. I'm not really sure. And then they're going to give you your reading score. And you may be surprised. Maybe you're exactly where you need to be, and maybe you might find that you're way over. And they will give you some good hints on what to do. So this is going to be really eye-opening. I'm very curious to see what you come up with. It'll be very eye-opening for yourself. So I'll bring this slide back again. But again, you can send it to me later today, about by 6 o'clock if you want to. Or you can send me your score and just say, this is my score and, I need to make it easier, or I did really well, or whatever you want to do. So again, you have my email. Most of you have it now, linda@wellnessinc.com. Send me your reading scores, and I'll be happy to discuss it with you. So tomorrow, we are going to talk about the golden opportunities that come from your book. And this is a really powerful day because it all comes together. You've been talking about how to write your book. Well, what are you going to do with your book? And I'm going to tell you a little story about why my book that was a bestseller on Amazon was not a good idea for me, because it didn't help me build my business. And that's what we're going to talk about, how you can use your book, how to write the right book so that you build your business the way you want. You get what you want out of your business. So as we talked about, I hope you've enjoyed today's session, and there's only so much we can do in 5 days. You've seen Dr. Michael Christensen, who was on Tuesday, and I just want to mention something from Karen, who is another person that I've been working with. And so this is what she said to me: you make writing a book as easy as connecting the dots, almost idiot-proof. And so Karen is definitely not an idiot. She's really a very smart woman, but anything that makes something easy, I mean, that's going to be beneficial. So I appreciate that she sent me that. She actually said that quite a few times to me, so I felt like I wanted to quote it. So as you know, on March 1st, I will be starting this intensive, which is the Write a Wellness Book Sprint. And I will be there guiding you, coaching you, helping you change your practice as well as your life with your book in many, many wonderful ways. We'll be covering defining your goals and your message and your audience, writing and recording, editing and polishing in much more depth than I did today, because we'll spend more time on it. Cover design and publishing in much more depth, obviously, than I can do in one hour today. It's in March, we'll be talking about the message, the foundation of your book, the title, the cover, the back copy. In March and April, we'll be talking about the structuring, the writing, and the editing, and we'll have a recording weekend for anyone that wants it. It could be another weekend. I know that somebody said she's going to be away that weekend. Don't worry. If that weekend doesn't work, I mean, it's completely flexible. This is just a suggestion. So nobody has to stick to this time schedule if you have vacations or other things coming up. It's completely flexible. This is just a guideline for you, and you'll work at your own pace. The editing, the formatting, and the printing, and getting ready to publish. And I have some exciting new publishing platforms to talk to you about for the people that are in my course. It's a bit hard to talk about them now because they're a little bit, take a bit of explanation. But this is something exciting that I know you'll want to hear about. Now, as I talked about, there'll be multi-format for those that want to be on the calls. If you miss the calls, you'll get the recording, you get the slides, you get the audio, and you get the transcripts. But we will have the live training, so I can be with you and answer your questions live. There's Karen over there, and Michael's not on this call. He's probably calling. He called in from China or Japan or Singapore for every single call, even if it was the middle of the night. He didn't miss a single call. So that's how important he found the calls. You'll also get all the templates and the worksheets and scripts, etc., which is really valuable because it cuts your thinking time. When I say, here's a template to follow, you don't have to reinvent it. You don't have to figure it out yourself. You have everything, including checklists and resources, and all the resources such as designers and how to publish and where to print your book and save money. We'll also have the accountability and the special buddy program. And I'll be there in the program with you, coaching you personally, not leaving you with another coach. And absolute proof, because I'll be writing my own book with you, and I'm just as excited to write my next book as you are to write yours, so it's going to be so much fun. As I talked about, the investment is for payments of $497, or you can pay the whole thing at once, and how this can actually save you quite a lot of money when you know how to actually figure out what you need and save on editing, which can actually be way more than the course itself if you don't do the steps properly that we've talked about. Also saving on costly mistakes such as having the wrong cover designer, not having the right printer. Printing can really cost a lot of money if you don't have a good book printer and you don't know who to go to. They're all over the map what they can charge. They can charge whatever they want. And if you don't know how to find a good one, you can overpay very, very easily. So as I said, if you're interested, apply now to hold your place, and then we'll talk. And if you find this isn't for you, if our conversation doesn't make you feel secure and excited and ready to go, then I will refund your money, and there's no hard feelings. I want everyone to be happy and excited and raring to go. And once you sign up, you'll receive a link to schedule your phone call, which, you know, quite a few people that have joined, several people have already done that. They've scheduled their calls coming up in the next few days. And so I just want to leave you with a few quick more things. So the note to yourself, if you have this on your bulletin board or even in your mind that you want to write a book someday, well, let's just remember that someday is not a day of the week. It's not really on your bulletin board. It's not really in your agenda. And if you want Sunday to be a real day, you need to make it happen. One way to do it is to join my program. Another way is to do it yourself. But you need to set a date when you're going to write your book and a finished date when you're going to publish your book. Otherwise, you'll still have this note to yourself up here next year, and I don't want that for you. I really don't. So I talked about the special bonus of writing your back cover copy, and there's still a few places in the top 10 to get in. But now I have another special bonus that I want to tell you about. Now, I want to tell you that everybody who's already joined is going to get this special bonus. So don't worry, if you joined before, for sure you're going to get this. It's not that you're excluded. You get everything. I will personally work on your chapter titles to make them media attractive, to make them magnetic. And this is what I do all day. I write copy for my clients who have either health practices or some kind of health product. And I have to make everything magnetic because that's what copywriting is. It's attracting people to click the link, to go to the next spot, to buy the, you know, get the buy button. And I have clients that come back to me over and over again saying, I need your copywriting. In fact, I've held a few people off for this week because I couldn't handle anything else. But this is my skill and my practice. So I will do this for you. I will take your chapter titles and make them magnetic and help you attract the media. And I'm offering this to the next 5 people that want to come into the sprint, or 4:30 tomorrow Eastern. So by the time this webinar ends tomorrow, whichever comes first. If 4 or 5 people join, then I will end it before. And if not 5 people join, then it will end at 4:30 Eastern, no matter what. So what I will do for those 5 people and the people who have already joined for sure is I will help you make every chapter a standalone topic and give each chapter an attention-grabbing, curiosity-provoking title. How does that sound? So now I want to go to Q&A. I want to open it up to anything I have not already answered, any questions you may have, and then we'll bring this to a close. So Tracy, can we open up the final Q&A?
Hey, Linda, thank you. We do have some questions, and I'll also remind people to use to type their questions in using the question box. David asks, in this course, are we going to talk or get to talk first before we decide about what we're going to write?
Yes.
He's not exactly sure what or who he's writing to.
Yes, absolutely. That's why we have a call scheduled, and we're going to take as long as we need to make sure that you narrow down your topic and that you know who your audience is. That's the purpose of this call. It's for us to get to know each other and then to discuss your topic. So absolutely. I mean, you will not start writing anything until we've had a good conversation and you feel really good about where you're going with your book.
These questions, can you move back to the slide with the Fleisch reading on it?
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yeah, I'm hoping I did too.
Our next question is, if we can't do the program now, when is the next opportunity?
That's a good question. So it's FLESCH, and then if you just write down Fleisch readability formula, and if you put that into Google, it'll come up. So just remember FLESCH, readability formula. When will I be offering this again? I will be at some point. At this point, I don't know. It might be 6 months. It's hard for me to say. So yes, I mean, you can wait. If you're on my list, you'll find out. I mean, you are obviously on my list. So you will know when the next launch is, but at this point, I don't know. I also am working with some clients privately. So for somebody that doesn't want to take the course because you're too busy, that's another option. And you can speak to me if you want to get your book done, but you don't want to take the course because of time. So those are two options. Or if you feel you're not ready now for any reason, you know, sooner or later within the next year, I will offer it again. And seriously, I mean, if you feel like it's just not possible for you, you can't do the work, then that's a perfectly legitimate reason not to do it, because I would rather not have people take the course and not be able to do it. I'd rather you do it when you can do it. So think about it. If you're going to join, you should be eager and ready. And I don't mean every red light has to be clear to a green light. That's not going to happen. You still have work, you still have vacations, you still have family. That you're going to miss some of the courses, some of the live training. That's not a worry. But if you are at a place in your life where you really can't put any time into it, then it's not the time for you.
Thank you, Linda. I do have an in-depth question here, and I'm not sure if maybe you could try answering it or possibly tomorrow.
Okay.
One of our viewers wanted to learn about getting permissions to cite other authors' works. And then also references for citing biblical references.
Okay, well, permissions from other authors, that's fairly straightforward. So if you want to quote from another author's book, you have to get the copy. You have to check with the publisher usually. If it's a published book by a publishing company, you have to contact the publishing company and ask what you need to do. Sometimes they actually charge you if it's a fair amount, or let's say you want to quote from a newspaper article or something else. They do sometimes charge you, sometimes they don't, and then they will tell you how to attribute it, like what you need to put in for attribution. If it's like a sentence or a quote or something, you could try writing to the author yourself and just say, I'd like to use this quote of yours and of course attribute it to you. So sometimes it could be easier. It depends if it's a big publisher or a small publisher or self-published. If it's self-published, I try just contacting the author. Usually they'd be very flattered, especially if you have a link to their book or some way that people could find out more, because it's good, publicity for them. But if it's a big publisher, you need to contact the publisher. Citations, I'm not, if you can repeat that part of it again, the question.
References, Linda?
Yeah. Oh, references, okay. Sorry, I didn't hear you for a second. If you're referencing, I'm assuming you mean scientific articles. Yes, I mean, you have to reference anything that you take from an article, from a scientific article. And there's standard ways to do it. It's not very hard. I'm not going to go into it now, but you can actually Google how to quote a scientific article. And usually you would put them at the back of the book. You could put them at the end of each chapter. That's a choice. I prefer to have them at the back of the book, unless there's maybe just, 2 or 3 per chapter. So it's not a big problem. People do that. I had a lot of references with the book I just worked on with Dr. Michael. They're all at the back. And yeah, I mean, that was fine. He did a lot of research and he had a lot of references.
Writing books. So can you give us some idea of the cost likely to be incurred in addition to signing up for the course? So I have a ballpark idea of total cost to produce my book.
Yeah. So again, I mean, there's 3 main areas where you need some outside help. That's your publishing team. So the first one is you need some design help, and that would be the cover and the interior of the book. And I didn't actually talk much about the layout or the interior of the book, but that's kind of important because you can buy templates online where you can lay out your book. And if you're really strapped for cash and you really, you know, you're on a very tight budget, you can do that. That is a thing you can do. It takes a bit of technical ability, but you can actually buy some templates for like $10 or $20 or $50, something like that, and lay out the book yourself. It is not going to look as professional, but maybe if it's your first book and you're very low budget and you want to have mainly an ebook, that could work. You can also get some relatively inexpensive to more expensive. Again, there are some highly professional people and they charge different rates. So you can look around and you can get some editing some cover designs starting at under 100, at 100, at 200, at 500. I mean, at a higher level after 500, you're going to have multiple designs. The designer will really work with you and give you a few different designs, and you choose the one you like. At the lower level, maybe they'll give you one design. So it really depends what you want. I found actually with my last group of students that I gave them a fairly low priced designer, and then they wanted more options. So we said, well, if you want more options, you can, but it's going to cost a bit more, and they all chose to get more options. So again, it depends, but let's say, I mean, if you're really strapped, let's say you could get a cover design for under 100. So that's at the lowest level. Editing, if you do most of the editing yourself, and if you're a pretty good reader and writer and editor, you could probably get the last stage of the editing done, and that could be 100 or 200 maybe. So that's at the lowest end when you need the least editing and you do most of it yourself. If you do less of it yourself or you need more extensive editing, it's a few hundred or it could be more. And the other thing is printing. Now the printing is a fantastic thing because you don't even have to invest anything in printing. If you want to get, one copy of your book on Amazon, a print book from CreateSpace, it costs you like $4 or $5. If you want 5 copies, it's maybe $4 or $5 each. So you can get pay $20. So printing is the huge thing that's changed drastically because, as I said, when I first started printing, self-publishing, Amazon didn't exist and print on demand was very new. It didn't really exist either. So in order to get a reasonable price on a book, let's say to have my book cost $3 as a cost, and then I would sell it for 15 or 20, I had to invest in 2,000 to 3,000 copies at a time. I couldn't do less. And so it would cost me $6,000 every time I wanted to print. So I did this many times. One of my books I printed 6, 7 times, and each time I had to invest, $3 or $4 or $5 or $6,000. The final time I didn't sell out because I kind of stopped, lost interest in that book. So I still had that book around. So that amount I lost, but I did sell through and did make money on those books. But now you can print 100 books or 50 books or 1 book. And so that's really not in the equation. So summarizing all of this, I mean, if you really want to do everything at the lowest level and do most of the work yourself, you could probably get by with under 300, even under 200. It's not, I don't suggest that you be at the cheapest level for everything because I think it's more important to have quality, but that's doable. So that's a starting point.
Thank you, Linda. And I do have a few more questions. Just a reminder to get your questions in now to Linda using the question box. Linda, we have a question from Ian. What is the difference between writing for a book or writing modules for a course?
Well, it's more the deliverability. If you're writing modules for a course, you have to think of how it's going to be delivered. Some of it could be delivered in a reading format, but most likely you're delivering a course in some kind of audio-visual format. So you might be doing something like I'm doing. It could be on a meeting, or it could be in a webinar, or it could be audio, or it could be on the phone. So it all depends on what delivery mechanism you have. However, sorry, I just noticed the typo and it's been bothering me. I think that's better now. Okay, yes. But the content could be the same. So you can take the content from your book and create a course out of it, or if you have a course, you can take the content from your course and create a book. And if you already have a course, I'm wondering if that's what you're asking about, you probably have transcripts. So you basically have a good part of your content now. That's the outline, you know, the main content from your book. Now, you may need to edit it a bit to make it more readable, put in chapters, move things around, maybe have more stories, but that's a wonderful starting point. So if I answered your question correctly, and I think you're asking, can you take a course and create a book? Then the answer is yes, and you'll be well ahead of the game.
How much to print through the people you use?
I have very reasonable printers, actually 2 of them that I've worked with, and I'm very happy with the results. So I think that one of them starts at about 100 books, which is not very high, actually, because if you're going to have print books, I recommend that you print 100 books. And the reason is that when you have your book come out, you're going to be really excited, and you want to be able to give copies to your family and your friends and your colleagues, and hey, my book came out. I mean, handing them a tablet or something and say, hey, check out my book on Amazon, it's not quite the same as saying I'm an author and I wrote this book and here's my book. So I think that it starts around $4 or $5 a book. It depends on the page count. So obviously the bigger the page count, it's going to be a little more, but it's pretty reasonable. So I think it's maybe $400 or $500 for 100 books, something in that range.
The question box, it looks though, Linda, that you've responded to all the questions for today.
Okay, super. So tomorrow we're going to be talking about the golden opportunities, and I hope to see all of you again. We're wrapping up tomorrow, and if you have questions tonight, you can email me. Again, I'm always checking my email and answering. I think I've pretty much answered everybody. And again, if you want to take advantage of getting your media attracting contents written, again, just to remind you that this promotion or this offer ends tomorrow at 4:30 at the time when tomorrow's webinar ends, or the first 5 people who join, whichever comes first. And again, if you've already joined, please don't worry, because you're going to get this as well. And so I want to thank you again. I'm going to give you a very snowy goodbye today from this cute little guy here who's in a snowfall. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.